Well, we're trying again. I think we're live. This is our Enriching the Relationships That Matter Most page. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Tonight we are live, and Coach Diana hopefully will get her link and join us. We were on the wrong page. We were scheduled on the wrong page, so I apologize for that. So let us know that we're live. We're talking about how to heal from a broken heart. How to heal from a broken heart. So if we are live, let us know. That would be great. If Karen, you can text me or let me know on the page if we're live. That would really help us to know what to do. And Diana, if you're watching this, if you can get on stronger. Okay, we are live. Perfect. And Diana's coming in. Thank you so much. Here comes Diana. Hello, Diana.
Hello.
We're on the right page now.
All right. We made it happen. Thank you.
Oh my gosh. You know what, though? That really stresses me out. It really stresses me out to have tech problems. You know me. And so that's like, oh. Hello, everyone. Live on YouTube. I hope we're live on Facebook. So good. We're live on YouTube. Alberta from, hello, Kathy, you're from Alberta. It's so good to see you. Angie, Oregon. Wonderful. Well, hi. Hi, everyone. So we're going to take a deep breath, right?
Right. We're live on Facebook too.
Okay, excellent, excellent.
Nice.
How many of you have ever experienced a broken heart? How many of you have ever experienced a broken heart? And if you have, if you want to share how that heart got broken, I certainly have experienced a broken heart more than once. But who's experienced a broken heart? Yeah, we were saying, you did it. Yes, we did. I had some help from my husband, but we did do it. And so we're so proud of ourselves. Me? Yeah, Janice says me. Oh, yes. Oh, yes. Yes. And when you experience that broken heart, what happened? How did that impact you? How did that impact you physically, emotionally, mentally, spiritually, relationally? How did your broken heart impact your life? From the inside as well as on the outside. You know, when I had a broken heart, I just couldn't function. I couldn't function for a while. And I was so mad at God for what happened in my life. I don't know if I ever told you this, Diana, but I threw my Bible under the bed. And I don't think I took it out from under the bed for probably close to 6 months. I mean, like I had dust over the top of my Bible. I was so mad at God. It just sometimes, and this was many, many years ago, but I lost a child in a different way through adoption. We were planning to adopt a baby, and the mother had led us to believe that we were going to adopt this baby up to the birth, and we were supposed to get a call from the hospital, and we never got the call. I ended up finding out she gave it to another family without ever telling us, and so I was just so brokenhearted over the loss of that dream, and just so mad at God for allowing it to happen. Sometimes we just really get stuck in that anger that I couldn't seem to trust him for a while.
You know, I see in the feed also that there are some other ladies are resonating with the loss of a child as well. And you and I talked a little bit about my story right before we came on, and I too have lost. My response to that loss of that child, it was my first, and we talked about my first and my third, but the first one was the hardest hit. And you know, I didn't feel anger. I felt confusion. And I just shut down. And my immediate reaction to dealing with that loss was to dive into busyness. I was a master's level student, and I just I started taking doctoral level classes. My course load was more than I could manage. But it was my response, my reaction to dealing with the pain.
Yeah. So some of our listeners are saying they felt devastated, so broken, there was nothing left. They couldn't breathe. In all ways, it affected her, but spiritually affected us and all of the above. I felt shattered. Yeah. Did you know there's actually something physically that can happen to us? It's called, I was talking to Diana about this before we got on live. It's called broken heart syndrome. And one of my friends called me last year saying, oh my gosh, I'm in the hospital and I got diagnosed with broken heart syndrome. And what happens is you're under so much stress or so much grief that it actually affects your heart, and you start having chest pains as if you're having a heart attack. But she wasn't having a heart attack. So that when you go in the hospital and they do all the heart attack tests, it doesn't show up as a heart attack, but it does show up as a heart irregularity in your actual physical heart, where your left ventricle isn't pumping right. And they've labeled it as broken heart syndrome. And last year, when that school shooting was in, I think in Texas, where those children were shot, and one of the teachers got shot. Her husband died within 24 hours of broken heart syndrome. He was under so much stress, and they had little kids. And so it's a very real syndrome physically when you get so shocked by a stressor, so shocked by something that you can't hardly accept. And so we don't want to minimize the reality of a broken heart. In fact, the Bible talks about a broken heart. In Psalm 147:3, it says, he heals the brokenhearted and binds up their wounds. God cares about your broken heart. And if we think about people in the Bible, just a few people I was thinking about, I thought about Hannah. And she was so brokenhearted that she couldn't have a child. She was sobbing so hard that Eli, the priest, thought she was drunk. Remember? And then Elijah was so brokenhearted over his supposed failure that Ahab and Jezebel didn't repent, that he was brokenhearted and he despaired of his life and wanted to die, and he thought his ministry was over. And then Jesus, in Matthew 26, it says, my soul is exceedingly sorrowful, even to the point of death. And Jesus was brokenhearted over what he had to face and the sin of people. And the Apostle Paul, this strong stalwart of God, in 2 Corinthians 1:8 says, we were so utterly burdened beyond our strength that we despaired even of life. The Apostle Paul was brokenhearted. So the very first thing we want you to know, ladies, is that broken heart is not something you should be ashamed of. It's not something that you should run from. It's not something that you should feel like guilty, like what's wrong with me, that I don't have enough faith to trust God in my broken heart. We all have broken hearts at times, and it's a very real thing.
It's really a part of our human experience.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And you know, I think when you talk and you express how the Word of God mentions it, but also the examples of how it can affect us physically. I know sometimes we feel like if we're despair, or if we're grieving, or if we're sad, that we're weak, and that's not the case. It's literally a part of our physical response to what we're experiencing emotionally.
Mm-hmm.
It's not just a mind thing. It's a mind-body connection. Wow.
Yeah, and our mind affects our emotions affect our physical body, our spiritual life. It's all of the above. And so the very first thing that we want to tell you about experiencing a broken heart, whether it's because of your husband's infidelity, losing a child, losing a job, losing a dream, losing a part of your faculties, like you can't drive anymore. I know my dad's getting older, and there's certain things that are just affecting him, that life is mostly losses at this stage of his life. And it's hard. You're losing your eyesight, and you're losing your hearing, and you're losing your freedom to make decisions because your adult children are telling you what you have to do. And you're losing your mobility. You can't walk like you used to, and you can't drive like you used to. And life is a lot of losses. And there's a lot of brokenheartedness in older age. He tells me that the golden years are full of rust. And so there's some brokenheartedness at that stage of life. And at any stages of life, we can experience brokenheartedness at whatever levels. And so the very first thing that Diana and I want to assure you of is that it's not ungodly. It's not weak. It's not immaturity or anything wrong with you that you have a broken heart.
We will all experience that at some point in life. We all must engage in this process of what we call loss and brokenness in some way, shape, or form. It's just a part of our experience. Mm-hmm. Leslie, you've talked about this before. When Jesus was despaired that he sweat drops of blood. Mm-hmm. I can't imagine what that's like.
Yeah, to be so, like, the pressure in your head and the pressure in your eyes. When he was in the Garden of Gethsemane, it said he cried and sweat drops of blood. And so we think about that, of how much physical and emotional, even though he knew the outcome, but the process was so painful that he was just dreading it. And his heart was breaking, not only for the sin of humankind, but what he was going to have to do, how he was going to have to suffer for what love cost him. and I'm sure he was brokenhearted at the whole mess of humanity, and yet in love wanted also to help us. And so it's such a yin yang sometimes of those things. But
Mhm.
I see in the feed so many of you, devastation of a 33-year marriage, as well as my mother and stepdad taking his side and no longer speaking to you. And Sherry, that's so, so hard. And Colleen said, I wasn't mad at God. I cried out and looked for him everywhere, like he was missing. Yeah. And sometimes we feel like God's missing during our brokenheartedness. He's not, but it feels sort of like when the sun is in the clouds, after a couple of days of that, it's like, sunshine, I need you. Where are you? And it's not that the sun isn't there. It's just that you're not feeling it. And I felt that a lot on the East Coast in the winter. And so, yeah, it's hard when we don't feel God's presence, when we don't sense his presence, but it doesn't mean it's not there, but it makes dealing with a broken heart harder and more challenging.
I also think of, someone mentioned in the feed, the fog. Sometimes there's just this mental fog where you can't think. You're kind of in a daze. That's a real natural part of loss and grieving, is where you just don't know where to put your feet. It is a thing. I have a client that says when we discover that something's real, that you're going through and resonate with it, we say it's a thing. We might not have a name for it, but it's a thing. It's real and it occurs.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. So what many of you are going through as I'm reading the feed is heartbreaking. And you feel numb, or you feel sad, or you feel angry, or you feel confused, or you feel furious. So where do you go with that? Where do you go with that? Because we want to talk about how do we be in that thing that is life. Life is hard. And we're doing a workshop next week. I'm doing it. How do we move from breakdown, where we have that broken heart or whatever breakdown, to breakthrough? Because one of the things that we want to see in life is that we don't get stuck, especially in the hole of despair, or get stuck in the breakdown place where we can't find our way out of there. And so there is a process to life, just like spring, summer, fall, winter. And one of the good things about winter is that spring comes, right? One of the things about Easter is that we are reminded that resurrection comes after death. Spring comes after a cold, hard winter. And that reminder that there is movement through nature, there's movement through life. And our story isn't at the end, usually at brokenhearted. We have more to the story. And how do we move ourselves through that phase without rushing and denying it and ignoring it or pretending it's not real? But how do we begin to heal from a broken heart? And if those of you who've gotten through that process, if you would share a couple of tips, because one of the things that I think is so powerful is that we learn from one another. Diana and I here aren't the only ones who experienced broken hearts. You have. I see it all in the feed. You've experienced broken hearts. So what were some of the things that you found helpful? What were some of the things that you found healing and soothing and restorative in the midst of your broken heart, whether it was spiritually restorative or physically restorative? Like Diana said, she got really, really busy. And I imagine that one of the things she had to start doing was slow down.
If you don't, it catches up to you.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So what are some of the things, before we come up with answers, I'd like you to share with one another what you've done when you've had a broken heart? Yeah. What have you done? Because I think one of the things I've done as an overachiever, as a doer, is I've sort of shamed myself when I've had a broken heart. Like somehow I should be stronger than that. I shouldn't have let that bother me so much. Unless someone died, I could handle that's okay to have a broken heart. But if I was just disappointed with the outcome of something, or if I was just upset that, something didn't go the way I wanted to, and I was kind of brokenhearted over that, or I wasn't treated the way that I thought I should be treated, both as a woman or as a professional, and I was brokenhearted that I didn't get certain opportunities because of those things. I sort of shamed myself, like somehow I should be better than that. Somehow I should be stronger than that. Somehow I shouldn't let that bother me so much. And, there's a freedom in just admitting that you're just a human being. It's okay. Even Jesus, when he was a human being, was brokenhearted, not just at the cross, not just at the Garden of Gethsemane. Remember in Matthew when he cried out, "Oh, Jerusalem, Jerusalem, I would have gathered you together as a mother hen gathers her chicks, but you would not. You would not. You rejected me." And he wasn't even near going to the cross at that point, but he was still brokenhearted. Janice says, "I was in a hole and I'm not to the top yet, but I'm climbing out one day at a time." Still a lot to do. So Janice, what are you doing to climb out? Give us some of your tips or strategies. Yeah, Kate's from Australia. Welcome. We're so glad to have you here. So Teresa said, "I did a healing retreat." What was that like, Teresa? I have done some of those too. So I would love to hear from you. What's a healing retreat look like? Meditation and breath work. Okay, these are some really important things. And maybe we'll do a little bit of that here even today so that you can see how that can calm your body and even your heartbeat if you practice some meditation and calming breaths. What else have you done? Rest and compassion for myself, Edie. That's so important. Wisdom and who to share with. Yeah. Friends who just showed up and sat with me in my grief like Job's friends did when he was so brokenhearted. He lost his children, he lost his money, he lost his reputation, he lost his everything, health. And he's sitting in a pile of rubbles grieving, and his friends showed up and didn't talk to him. They just sat with him because he was brokenhearted. Asking for practical help with my children so I could grieve. Yeah. Teresa said, "I did things I truly loved." Self-care. Yeah. And sometimes as Christians, we feel a little guilty about that. It feels a little selfish to think about self-care like we're going to get a manicure and a massage every day. But that's not what self-care is. Self-care is taking care of your injury.
I like this one, Leslie. Reading through the Psalms, it's amazing how God speaks to you.
Mm-hmm. Counseling, journaling in the hard, crying out in a real raw way to God, praying, friends. Yeah. Self-care. Those of you who are writing self-care, could you put in the chat specifically what kind of self-care was helpful to you? For me, self-care always involves quiet, and it always involves beauty, and it always involves nature. So I love in the Psalms where it says, and this would be a meditative kind of thing and a quieting kind of thing, and it could even be a breathing kind of thing. So if you breathe in, "The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He makes me lie down in green meadows. He leads me beside the still waters." And what happens there? He restores my soul. "Even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me." And on and on. So the Psalms are restorative. Beauty, nature is restorative. Quiet is restorative. Yeah. Where do you find retreats? Really good question. See a counselor to process feelings. So where I found my retreat, it wasn't a, there are some healing retreats now. So you can Google healing retreats from a Christian worldview, because there's healing retreats from a Buddhist worldview, all kinds of worldviews. So you want to make sure you get to the right retreat. But healing retreat centers, they have them now. Back when I did mine, they didn't, at least I didn't know of any. So I just Googled a Catholic retreat center near my house, and they have what they called silent retreats, where you could go and you could rent a room. It was like a little monk cell. It had a little bed and a cross over your pillow and a chair, and that's it. And you couldn't talk the whole weekend. And you had counselors that you could sit with if you wanted, and they would give you some counsel or not. You could walk the gardens. You could, the meals were fed for you. You had, room, and you were just by yourself and really just being quiet with the Lord and in nature and in beauty in that place. And that's what I did. But others have done other places where there's more structure to it.
Solitude can be so healing. And what you said, yeah, you can just Google Jesuit retreat centers, and you'll find it's a practice among the Jesuits to do silent retreats. And they often have some nice grounds where you can just sit and contemplate, meditate on some scriptures that you find healing. Walk as you meditate. One of the things I like to do is really connect to the sky and just wonder. It's my way of reaching out to God and just saying, I know He's out there in He's here in spirit with us, but I somehow feel like He's out there in another dimension as well. I can't see the heavens and the earth where He exists physically with my eyes. And so for me, it's just a wonder to look into the sky and to just be amazed at His beauty.
Mm-hmm. And for me too, it helps me feel small, not small like insignificant, but small like I can't possibly figure this out.
Yeah.
And I don't have to. I'm just small. I'm little, God. I'm just little. And you are big, and the universe is big, and there's so much more going on here than I could possibly know. So I don't know why you let this happen. I don't know why this is okay with you. I don't know why anything, and I don't need to know. I'm just a small little blade of grass here in this big universe time of eternity. And I'm just going to have to trust you. And it really helps when you get into that really small space of life, when you're by yourself and you're quiet and you're in nature.
That's why I like the ocean. It's so vast. It kind of gives you this concept of how big God is, you know. And if He's that big, He's that able, He's that capable of holding even me in this place where I'm hurting so badly. And the other thing is, He's touched by all of the same things. I mean, when you talk about Jesus sweating drops of blood, I think he knows. It's not like we have a God who hasn't experienced this.
Yeah. And Kathleen says, I'm resting. My daughter passed away only a few weeks ago. And, I love that song, Resting, Resting, I am resting in the joy of what thou art. I am trusting, that your loving heart will carry me. I'm not sure I remember all those words right because it's an old, old hymn. But resting, I am resting in the joy of who you are. And I'm going to draw a diagram for you. I'm not telling you that this is always going to work in these moments, because sometimes you're just in a space where you just need to be quiet and do what you need to do to rest. But here's one of the things that helped me. So you and me and my trusty whiteboard here. So if this is us, all right, in the cosmos of things, or maybe I'm going to actually redo this a little bit. Let me make this small. Like I said, it helps me to realize I am small. All right, so I am small. And God is big. And sometimes when I look at God, I'm looking at Him through what's happening in my life. We've done these diagrams with external world, internal world. So I look at Him through the lens of my external world. We'll put that like the cloud, whatever that is. So if we think about external, so if the external in my life is going well, I have a happy family, my kids are healthy, my husband's loving, I'm making enough money, I'm safe, I'm secure. I'm saying to myself down here, oh, isn't God good? Isn't God good? Right? But when the external starts to get really hard, and my husband cheats on me, or he's mean to me, or he's lying to me, or my husband dies, or my kid dies, or I don't have any money, or life is scary. All right. And my heart is broken because this is going awful, horrible. I start to think bad thoughts about God because I'm still looking at God through the external. Oh, God, why did you let this happen? You must not be good. Isn't that how Satan tries to deceive us? God's not good, right? And so one of the things I've practiced is I realized I was doing that. So I've begun to really practice taking that away, because I have found that sometimes when life goes really well and everything is good on the external, I don't think about God at all. Because I'm like, I don't need to think about you. Everything's fine. I'm not even praying. I don't do that so much anymore. But it was a distraction. Life was so good. I didn't even think about myself being small or God being big. I just thought, oh, I'm happy. This is fine. Right? So what I learned to do was from a verse when I went through my heartbreak with losing that child. And after I pulled out my dusty Bible from under my bed, and I just played one of those games where you open your Bible and you say, okay, God, if you're going to talk to me now. And I don't recommend that, but I opened it to 1 John 1. And I just started reading. In the 1 John, it says, God is light, and in him there is no darkness at all. And so I began to look at God like that. God, you are light. In you is no darkness at all. So for whatever happens in this external world of mine, I can't use it to judge who you are, whether your God is good, he's so blessing me, or God is bad, he's let this happen to me. I can't do that because you say you're light and in you is no darkness at all. So this is what I began doing. I began to put the cloud over here because it's real. The external is real. Sometimes it's fine, sometimes it's not fine. But if I can look at God and let him help me see what's going on there, right? And then he helps me see what's going on there, right? And so then I can begin to heal and I can begin to grow because now I'm seeing more clearly that it's not about my circumstances, how I define God, right? Or even how I define myself. It's not like I'm better than anybody else if my circumstances are going well. And it's not like I'm the scum of the earth if my whole world falls apart. And it's easy to go there, isn't it? What else do you do to begin to change your thinking? Somebody mentioned worship. So that's another tool that we can use to kind of fix our mind on what is true and good and right in the midst of heartache, is to be intentional, to bring a sacrifice of praise. What else can you do? Playing long Bible meditations to go to sleep with, Colleen says. Very good. Yeah. Journaling, because you can kind of get those icky thoughts out and see them for what they are, right? When I was so angry with God, it was only when I began to journal that I could see how angry I was with him, because it's hard to admit it to yourself if you're a Christian. Like, I shouldn't be thinking those things, so I'm bad, so I'm not going to look at it. But just forcing yourself to write it out helps you see where you're at. Yeah.
Serve at your church.
Mm-hmm. Asked myself, how did I get myself into this mess? Cindy, that's a really good question. And Diane and I were talking about this ahead of time, because I think we can ask ourselves that question in a really helpful way. Like, how did I get myself into this mess? Maybe I didn't recognize red flags, or I didn't have good boundaries, or I didn't practice good stewardship, or I didn't have good self-discipline, whatever it might be. And this is how I'm in this mess. And I can learn from that. I can say, wow, if I had better boundaries, or if I managed my time better, or if I made sure I got enough rest, I wouldn't get into this mess. That's a good learning moment from some heartbreak situations or heartache situations. Mm-hmm. But there's another place that we go in with the accuser's voice. Why did I get myself in this mess? What's wrong with me? I'm bad because I didn't have all those tools in my tool belt at the time. And then we just go into condemnation mode and self-hatred mode and beating ourselves up mode. And that leads to kind of more heartbreak and more internal breakdown. So we want to make sure that when we're asking ourselves self-reflective questions, we're not doing it in a condemning way. We're doing it in a curious, learning kind of way. Sort of like when you step on the scale after you haven't stepped on the scale for a while, but your pants are getting a little tight. Right? You look at the number, you go, that's why my pants are tight. I guess I've been eating too much. And you start making a change versus, you fatso, see, you did, and you don't want to beat yourself up over your human foibles, your human lack of awareness, or whatever you didn't know, now you know, or whatever you need to learn, now you need to learn it. Marjorie says, when you truly acknowledge that we are part of God's plan and that this event was part of that, God won't allow something to happen that you cannot handle. I think there's a little bit of a shift I'd like to say in your statement, Marjorie, a little bit, because you're right that God won't allow something to happen to you that you cannot learn to handle, right? Because in the moment, you might feel like you can't handle it. Right? But God won't give it to you if he's not going to equip you to learn to handle it. But part of your learning, it's sort of like, when your kids are in school, their math teacher gives them fractions and it's like, I can't do that. And they can't in the moment, but the teacher is giving them something hard to learn to handle it. so that that's part of their maturing process, right? And so God often gives us something that he's calling us to learn, just like an infant is learning to walk, is learning to talk, is learning to feed themselves with a spoon, is learning to wipe their own high knees. They're learning to do things so that they can grow and mature. And we as a good parent ought to provide those opportunities. Even if our child says, I don't want to do that, that's too hard. We say, but this is part of what we want you to do to learn and to grow. And sometimes God puts us in those situations too, where it is hard, but we don't know how to handle it yet. And that's part of our workshop that we're going to be doing on Tuesday. We have a workshop that I'm going to be doing called Change Your Story, Change Your Life. Change your story, change your life. And if you get stuck in a negative story, like I've been too many times in my younger life that I got stuck in a really negative story, like God doesn't love me, or I'm a loser, or I'm not worth anything, or this, I can't believe this happened to me. What's wrong with me that these bad things keep happening to me? I would get really stuck in this negative kind of, I call it a victim mindset. Like, why is this happening to me? And I never thought about what can I learn from this? It never even crossed my mind. But once I started learning that phrase, like, oh, maybe God's put me in the situation, like even a traffic jam. Like, why am I in this traffic jam? Doesn't God know I need to be at the airport? Maybe I'm in the traffic jam to learn patience, because I don't do that real well, naturally, right? And so I might be in situations that God has me in to learn what I don't know yet in order to become more like him. What do you think, Diana?
Well, you know what I love about that, Leslie, and why I really would like our listeners to really join us is because we can learn from one another, and we can grow in our skills and in our tools and in our strength when we learn from one another. And so being in this community of women who are growing, I don't know about you, but I just look at the feed and I look at all of the solutions and all of the ideas that we feed off of each other. It's powerful.
And I think this is really crucial. And one of the things that we want you to experience a little bit in these Facebook Lives, one of the things that we do in my company and my ministry is we really believe in the power of connection and community. And we believe that we don't learn by information alone. We learn by experiencing that information and taking it into action steps. And we do that best in community, where we have support and help and encouragement and, applause for when we do it, and help up when we miss and we can't get it ourselves. And so we want you to experience a little bit of what that feels like to be in a community, to be in a support, even for this hour, of other women who know what it feels like to be brokenhearted, who've been there and have found some steps out. Diane and I aren't the experts. We've been there just like you in the trenches, and we've had friends to support us, and we've had friends who have continued to harm us because they didn't understand, or they had these easy, glib answers. And so we want you to experience what it feels like to have this collective wisdom where you have all your sisters with you, and they know what that feels like. And so we're going to be doing this workshop on December 6th, which is Tuesday. We're going to be doing one session at noon Eastern time. And this will be on a private page, not on my public Facebook page, so that you can be more perhaps real in some of the challenges you're having in changing your story. Now, you might not be able to change the external part of what broke your heart. Your husband may be cheating on you. He may have divorced you. You may have divorced him. Your children may be alienated. You may have cancer. Those might be the external parts of your life story. But I want to assure you that you do have the power, and you can grow to learn to have the power to change your story, even the external story, when you begin to change the way that you think about the possibilities going forward. And so we want to teach you, I want to teach you specifically how to do that in that workshop. And so if you haven't signed up to join yet, we have a couple thousand women already signed up to join. We would love to invite you to join. It'll be a free workshop. It's going to be for a whole hour. You're going to get a workbook. You're going to have lots of handouts to take notes. You're going to get exercises to practice even after the workshop. You're going to be in a chat where it's all private. It's not on our Facebook page. So you can say what you want to say without fearing that your mother-in-law is going to find it later and look at it. And where our coaches will be there to answer your questions. And so we really want you to experience what it feels like to know how you can move from breakdown to breakthrough. That doesn't mean heartache goes away completely, but it means you're in a very different place in your heartache than you were during the breakdown phase of your heartache. And you can learn to move through that so that even because of your heartache, in spite of your heartache, and through your heartache, you can write a different ending to that story than you would have had you just stayed stuck in your heartache. And I think of, the stories in the scripture. I think about Esther, for example. Esther is a 14-year-old girl in the Old Testament who is sold into sex slavery. She's captured by the men who capture girls for the king's concubine harem, and she's groomed to be a sex slave. I mean, we don't think about that in the Old Testament, but that's what she was. She was a sex slave. Concubines were sex slaves. They were at the bidding of the master. This is Esther, 14 years old. She's groomed to be this sex slave, and she apparently does quite a good job because she becomes the next queen. And then she's put in the situation where she's got to stick up for her people, and she doesn't know if she's going to live or die. Esther made a difference, not only in her story, but in the whole history of the Jews by the choices she made during heartache and heartbreak and hard stuff. And so we want to teach you what that looks like, how to do that, so that you don't get stuck in a negative story for the rest of your life because something bad happened to you. Because a lot of people do. A lot of people become very defined by what happened to me. I was a victim of rape. I was a victim of racial injustice. And you might have been, but you don't have to stay stuck in that place. You can change your story so that you can change your life. So if you haven't signed up yet, I would love for you to check it out, sign up for the workshop, come live so that you can participate with us and enjoy the community. If you can't show up live, you will still get an abbreviated replay, but you will miss the community and the connection actually will probably be better than the workshop itself. Really, it's that powerful. Diane, anything you want to say about heartache before we go to some questions?
Well, what I want to say is as you're talking about your workshop and the hows and how to get unstuck. I mean, how many women have you spoken to that have reached out for help over the course of their difficulties or their relationships and have not gotten the help they needed? I think
way too many.
And so what I want to say in adjunct to what you said is it's really important where you go for help, and that you're with someone who understands your situation and has a vast understanding of what it's like to walk in that. So help in and of itself is not adequate unless it's the right kind of help. And what I love about what you do and what you've prepared in all of the workshops that I've been to with you is it's written with scripture and vast understanding. Your story about Esther, I never saw that. I mean, you make it real, and personable and understandable. And what we want you to know is that we get it and we understand. And Leslie has put together some tools that you can put into action and how to seriously move forward. I can't say that enough. When I work with women, Leslie, usually it's 5 or 6 times they've reached out for help, not gotten the help they've needed, and time has gone by. And so I just want to implore you, if you're contemplating, try to fit it in your schedule. We'd love for you to be a part of this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was sharing, I mean, this is just a simple little stupid thing. I was sharing in the Facebook Live a couple of days ago, Diana, I can't remember who I was on with, but I was just on a cruise. I mean, this is recent. I was just on a cruise, a post-COVID cruise that we booked, pre-COVID, and we finally got to take. And I had a little moment where I had not a heartbreak at all, but I was in a breakdown moment, not a breakdown season, but a breakdown moment emotionally. I was tired. I was jet lagged. I was looking forward to going to the pool and relaxing by the pool on the cruise. And I couldn't find my room key, and I couldn't leave the room without my room key. And I was quite sure that my husband probably took my room key instead of his, and he had both keys. So I texted him and he said, "Oh no, I don't have your key. I didn't take it." So I thought, I got to stay here until he gets back so I can leave and go get my key from the desk. But while I was there, I had such negative thoughts and brooding and angry, like, I'm on vacation and I got to stay stuck in this room and I don't get to go to the pool. And this is and here's my story. I'm on vacation. I'm on a beautiful cruise ship. And I am moaning and groaning because I can't go out the door to the pool because of my key. That's my story. Well, how do I change my story? I don't have a key. It's not the external problem. It was me. And all the Lord said to me this was just 2 weeks ago. The Lord said to me, so Leslie, what would you feel like if you didn't have that story about your room key? And I said, what do you mean? He goes, you can just go out on the deck and sit there and read your book there. You've got a beautiful ocean to look at. You don't have to look at the pool. You can enjoy these 3 hours sitting in your room if you want to. It's totally up to you. You can change your story. And it was like, oh, of course I can change my story. And it was like so freeing. I still didn't have my room key. My husband was still gone. And when he got back, guess what? He did have my key.
Oh,
But my experience of those 3 hours was very different. And had he come home and I hadn't changed my experience, our experience together would not have been pretty, right? Nothing changed in the external. The only thing that changed was how I saw it. But by changing that, I was able to change the story and the outcome of that story for the rest of the evening. So we want to share with you some powerful tools. It's not that only tool, but we're going to actually have worksheets and you're going to actually learn to do it because I want to equip you to be able to move through breakdown to breakthrough. So thanks for the support, Diane. I really appreciate your kind words.
absolutely.
So let's move to some questions.
All right.
So somebody was here yesterday and she said, in yesterday's live video, I asked you what flavor ice cream you are. And she said, the question is, what's the first step to finding that out? I don't know who I am. I don't know how I'm supposed to grieve if my family won't let me. They're opposed to me continuing with this divorce, continuing to invite my spouse to family events. I'm a member of Conquer. I just don't know where to start. This is a really good question for so many Christian women. We have not. So the analogy I used yesterday in our Facebook Live or the day before, I can't remember, is if you were to go to an ice cream parlor, what ice cream would you choose? So you can do that and put it in the chat if you want. What ice cream would you choose? And the results of our little survey of the people who were on Facebook Live yesterday was there was tons of different ice creams people would choose, from chocolate chip to mocha chip to coffee to mint chocolate chip, mostly chocolate flavors, but there was some strawberry, vanilla, other kinds of flavors, maybe some sherbets. We don't all like the same thing. And what we as women do when a hot man comes into our life is instead of saying, I am strawberry ice cream, we don't even know what kind of ice cream we are. All we're doing is we're scanning the environment. What kind of ice cream do you want? Oh, you want chocolate? I'll be chocolate. We don't even know if we're chocolate, but we're trying to be what they want so that they'll like us. And we do this with our girlfriends. We do this with our family. We do this with our other people. We try to be what other people want us to be in order to be liked and accepted and belong and loved. And that's a very poor strategy for healthy relationships. And women, I think, are more susceptible to that, especially Christian women, because we've been taught to be sacrificial and loving and giving and accommodating. And most of us are. But it's really important for us to take the time to do our own work. So I appreciate that question about you don't know who you are in the webinar. That's the third shift that you need, is to learn who you are. And I will give you some tools to figure that out right in the workshop with the worksheets. But here's how you start. I would just encourage you to start this way. If you don't know who you are, I would want you to imagine a smorgasbord. Let's pretend like you were going to a restaurant and you never had Thai food. So you don't know if you like it or not, right? So you're going to go to a smorgasbord with all this different food, and there's Thai food, and there's Indian food, and there's English food, and there's American food, and there's Chinese food, and all kinds of food. And you don't know if you like it or don't. You don't know if you like fish. You don't know you don't know what you like. So what are you going to do? You're going to try some things, and you're going to taste them, and you're going to say, I don't like that. Nope, I'm never going to have that. And then you're going to taste something and go, that's okay. I kind of like that. And then you're going to taste something and go, ooh, I really like that. I could have more of that. Anytime I could have more of that. And so you're going to sample things in life. Do you like exercise? What kind of exercise do you like? Do you like to read? What kind of books do you like to read? Do you like to watch TV? What kind of TV do you like to watch? Do you like to take walks? What kind of walks do you like to take? What kind of nature do you like to? So you're going to experiment and pay attention to what you like and what brings life to your soul and what drains you and depletes you. You're going to pay attention to that. The second thing you're going to do is you're going to pay attention to what's important to you. Not what you feel. That's another topic, but what's important to you. What do I value? What kind of person do you want to be? Because you don't always feel like that person. But that's I don't always feel courageous, but I want to be courageous when I need to be. I don't always feel brave, but I want to be brave when I need to be, right? I feel fear a lot. I have anxiety a lot. So my feelings compete with who I want to be. But just because I feel fear doesn't mean I can't be courageous. Because actually, courageous people are the ones who act courageous when they feel afraid. So we'll talk a lot about that in the webinar, but I would encourage you to start there to figure out who you are, what makes you tick, what makes you feel alive, and what crushes your spirit. And I'm so sorry that your family isn't respecting your right to choose what you need to do for your next steps forward. Mm-hmm. Any other suggestions on how she can find what ice cream she is?
Mm-hmm. You know what? I think I would change the narrative. I mean, because I wouldn't want to come from this perspective of I've lost something, and I've lost myself. I kind of would step into joy. Like now I'm in a new place. I'm divorced now, and I get to rediscover who I really am. And I think for me, I think about that time before I got married. It was not bad being single. I really had a lot of fun, and I just experienced life. And so my encouragement is to look at this as a positive. Like I get to figure all this out. I get to really try new things, and I like the feeling part of it. Like what brings me joy. I tell the story. I was just, for the longest time, wanted to make fused art glass. And I was doing my taxes last year. And you know what that's like? Oh, that's a drudge. And I was floating around on the internet because I get distracted. And I saw this class. And I don't really normally feel leaps of joy because I just kind of do my thing. But I signed up for this class and I was so excited. That's how I knew I was meant to do it. And I thoroughly enjoyed it. Will I do it again? I don't know. But go what brings you joy. Find your creativity. And we're all so unique and different, but just express yourself in any way you can.
I love that. I would encourage you also, for those of you, I love that, Diana. And one of the things, the practice that I do, and I haven't done it for a while, but because I kind of know the answers, but when I didn't know the answers, every day at the end of the day, I would ask myself today, what brought me joy? Today, what little thing brought me joy? And what things happened in my day that completely drained me? And I would ask myself that question every single day. I probably did it for about 2 months. I had a little journal that I did every night. And I just asked myself those two questions. And what I learned, because I worked from my home in Pennsylvania, I had a home office, a counseling office in my walkout basement. And I learned that every time I would sit outside and see the birds and hear the sun, feel the sun, and you see the little hummingbirds at my feet and stuff, I would put that in. I felt joy. I sat outside. I felt joy. I walked outside. And all of a sudden I thought, I need to be outside more, because when I work at home, you don't have to go out all week if you don't want to. And I realized I have to be much more intentional about sitting outside for at least a half an hour every day, because that so fed my spirit and my body and my soul. Yeah. But I didn't know that. I didn't know it was so important to my well-being until I began to track that. And so just start tracking what makes, in stress and conflict and, arguing completely depleted me. And I didn't want to be in relationships where I had to always defend myself or explain myself. And so to really begin to recognize that and understand what drains you and depletes you and what energizes you is important, so that you can have better boundaries and better self-care.
Leslie, there's a comment here I wonder if you would speak to. One Facebook listener is saying, I don't feel I belong anywhere.
Yeah. Belonging is such an important part of our psyche. And I wish I had it in front of me. I was just reading a chapter out of a book that I love. It's called This Here Flesh. I think I've talked to you guys about it in the coaching staff. But she talks about belonging, and sometimes our craving to belong can actually lead us to dysfunction because we become the chameleon, or we become the people pleaser, because we so want to belong to a group, or we so want to belong to a person, that we lose ourselves in order to belong. And so we have to be careful that belonging is important, but we want to belong where we fit and where we can be ourselves, not where we have to compromise ourselves in order to be accepted to the group. So when I was a kid, and I'll talk about this a little bit at the workshop, I didn't belong anywhere. I wasn't with the popular kids. I wasn't with the smart kids. I was the only kid in my class that was from a divorced home. I felt really like I didn't belong, and it really affected my self-image and my self-esteem. But I wanted to belong so badly that I chose to hang out with kids that were not good kids and not good for me. I got arrested for shoplifting, other kinds of things that I'm not proud of, but part of my story. And so I think sometimes our craving for belonging can lead us to unhealthy places, to hang out with people who are not healthy people because they're missing belonging too, or they can be very controlling over us because we so want to belong somewhere. So I would just say that your longing for belonging is good. Just be careful that you don't compromise who you are in order to be in a group. So that's where you have to find, like the ugly duckling had to find her tribe. She had to find where she belonged. She didn't belong with those group, but she did belong somewhere. And so be who you are and find people who love that.
Thank you. That was well said.
Yeah. So let's think about, so when you can't find the words to pray anymore, only tears and silence, what would you say, Diana? I think those are prayers, aren't they?
Those are my best ones. When I'm just on my bed and I don't have on my knees and I don't have words, I can remember as a young believer just being broken by all my friends that didn't know him, and I had just found that God was, he was alive, and I had connected in that alive relation. I used to just cry and weep at my bed, and I'm telling you, those prayers came to fruition. Mm-hmm. And I long for the days where I could pour my heart out like that, again and again. But I think that's where God does his greatest work, in our brokenness, because we recognize our deepest need for him.
And the Holy Spirit always prays for us, and Jesus is constantly praying for us. And I'm so relieved, because sometimes my prayers are just, I don't know what to pray. Like, I don't know what to pray. Do you pray? How do you pray? Like, I'm like, Holy Spirit, I'm trusting that you are the wise prayer here. I'm trusting that you know what the right request is for God here. I have no idea. I'm helpless. I'm powerless. I'm just trusting that you are praying the right things for me. I don't know what I need the most right now. I think I need relief, but maybe I need, more learning here. And so I think there's where we need to be careful and just trust in our tears and in our silence that we have an advocate that goes before us, and they pray night and day for us. And so we don't have to live in fear, like, oh, I didn't say it enough, or I didn't say it right. I don't even think that we have to say it at all. I think prayer is actually, if you really want to know my opinion, I don't think prayer, when we talk to God, is for God's benefit at all, because he already knows everything. So it's more for our benefit. But I think prayer is more that silent, be still and know that I am God, so that we listen to God, because prayer is a conversation. It's not just a one-way, monologue, Santa Claus list of what I need from you, God, but it's listening. It's being quiet. It's being still and knowing that he is real.
He hears. The attitude of our heart is a prayer to him. Mm-hmm. And when you're in that place, I think that place of brokenness, it's a place of surrender. And what better place for him to come in and do his greatest work when we're surrendered to listening, surrendered to hearing, and surrendered to his will. Mm-hmm. I think more of an attitude than anything.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay. What do you suggest for dealing with back-to-back losses over several years? Each year I'm experiencing loss for the past 7 to 8 years. It's so overwhelming. And I'm heavy with grief, loss of family members, health issues, loss of employment, vehicle loss, way of life during COVID, bankruptcy. Sometimes it is too much. Yeah. Paul says, the God of all comfort who comforted us by sending Timothy to help us in our distress. And so again, I think that when it is too much for us, we need one another. We're not meant to walk alone. We're not meant, when it was too much for Job, he had his friends to comfort him. And then they became, know-it-alls. But for the first couple of weeks, they were comforters. And I think, to be able to be with one another and comfort one another and support one another. And these Facebook Lives, we love doing this because we're reaching, hundreds of women who may have never heard this before, but you are not meant to do life alone. And the church ought to be the place where you do get that support. And for some people it is, and for many it's not, especially post-COVID. They really haven't regrouped in the way that they could have or should have or maybe did in the past or haven't in the past. But I think we're living in such a busy culture right now. When I was in my cruise, we went to Greece and Turkey, and I was very awestruck by the amount of family, community, and camaraderie and connection these people in this culture had of Greece, as well as the Turkish people. They thought nothing of spending the afternoon sitting around a coffee table, just talking in the cafes. And you would never see that here because people got things to do and they're busy, busy, busy. And we're too busy to sit and we're too busy to talk. And we've got other things we have, going here and going there. They spent a lot of time with their families and they spent a lot of time with their friends in connection and community. And I think we're the poorer for it. And so God wired us for that. And so we need that. So I hope you have some friends that can help you through this 8-year dry spell for you. Any other suggestions, Diana?
Yeah, I would suggest reaching out, doing a search in your community or nearby for a grief. There are agencies that are centered around grief, and often funeral homes have facilities as well. They'll run groups, and I think you've been through a lot. I would find one of those groups. My mom did one that was excellent. Actually, I have her packet. She gave me all of her stuff so that I could use it in my work. But they did some real artistic things, some expressive things that they could work through their grief. And it was very, very helpful. Lots of poems. And so I would encourage you to engage in doing that with a group in your community. So check like the funeral homes, and then also
grief share. Churches have a lot of grief share now with like divorce care, but grief share. So that might be helpful.
Yeah, but that will help you to have a way to express it, not just verbally, but really artistically, creatively, and some ways that you can honor the losses and remember. Yeah, I think it's important. It's important to express it.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And I am so sorry you've been through a lot. And so to be able to honor that in your own body and spirit, I think that's part of where the Lord says to us, bear one another's burdens, and each should carry their own load. And sometimes people's burdens are overwhelming. They have so many burdens. And that's why that community and connection is so important, that we're to support one another and encourage one another and care for one another. And so when we don't have that one another in relationships, it can feel very lonely out there. Ecclesiastes says, when one falls down, his friend can pick him up, but pity the man who has no one to pick him up. And we're not talking about marriage here. We're just talking about connection with people, connection with community. And some of you don't have a marriage. Some of you have a horrible marriage. Some of you don't have a good family. Some of you have a horrible family. And that's why the body of Christ is supposed to be that healing community. And even if your church doesn't have that, you can find that support groups online. Here's one. There's others. Celebrate Recovery, Divorce Care, other support groups locally or online, even if you're in a domestic violence situation. Domestic violence shelter has some support groups. So bundle yourself up with people who are in a like-minded situation, but also wise. That's where Diana said, be careful where you get help. Sticks in a bundle, if you think about sticks, I have these bamboo skewer sticks, and one of them, they're easily broken. But when you take all those bamboo skinny skewer sticks and you put them together, you can't break them, right? They're not easily broken. Sticks alone can be broken by a child. And so you really want to make sure that you have some support and people that you can count on. Not that you lean on them so hard that they start to fall over, but that you can support one another. Can we get the workbook well in advance to be able to get it printed? My printer isn't working. I can't imagine you could. We haven't quite finished all of it, but if you let our staff know on Monday or maybe Friday that you would like a copy of the workbook ahead of time so that you can print it, I don't see why you couldn't. Just email assistant@lesliebernick.com and ask for that. All right. So say that you signed up for the workbook and that you'd like to get it printed ahead of time. All right. My girls suffer from this now. How do I help them? And I think we've talked about different ways you can help them, but being that support and validating their feelings and giving them the space to verbalize and journal and rest and regroup of all they need to do. So if there's another suggestion there's tons of great suggestions in the chat. So I'm going to move on to the next question. I am so stuck. I don't know how to live separated. He is just in the same suite, same property, yet enforced that there is no longer the family things, events. I want to be like Christ, but I also need to live well with my son. But there is so much stress, even with him living downstairs. What are your thoughts, Diana?
Well, I think there's something to be said for her knowing that the in-house separation isn't working. And so there's a great awareness there. What might feel like being unstuck? What might you need to move forward? I mean, sometimes you're in an in-house separation and it's not enough because there's been too much damage, or the relationship is just way too toxic. And maybe living well in that situation is not possible. So what are the other possibilities, I guess I would ask? And there's a son involved. And so what might that look like to seek a place of wellness and well-being so that she can nurture her son and herself?
Mm-hmm. So I think I love that you said that, Diana, because sometimes we get stuck in the now, and we don't even think that there might be possibilities. Like I got stuck in the now. Oh, I'm stuck in this cruise ship room, and we get stuck in the moment and we don't see the possibilities. And, if you had toxic mold in your house, and let's say you were trying to have remediation done with it, and so you put up plastic tarps and all that kind of stuff, but whatever space you were living in, you were still getting sick. You might have to come to the reality that I can't live here right now. I can't, because it's not healthy. It's not healthy for, even with the boundaries in place, the mold is still toxic. It's still affecting my lungs, or it's still affecting my child's lungs. And for me to try to make this work is unsustainable. And I think that is facing reality, which is what God calls us to face, the truth. When something is unsustainable, I don't know that he's asking us to continue to sustain it. He's asking us to look for the door out. Where is the other resources available? What else can I do? Where can I go? How can I get help to find a different place that's more sustainable for the long term than this is right now? Right. And I think you'll learn in the webinar that a lot of women, especially if you've been traumatized in the past, have kind of learned something called learned helplessness. And they don't even think that they could possibly do that. It never even crosses their mind because of past trauma and past helplessness. And so we want to help you learn what that is so that you can be intentional about not letting that. It's like being stuck in a jail cell when the door is unlocked, but you never even try to get out. And so we would encourage you to think through that possibility and ask God, maybe you're not allowing this because this is still too toxic for us and you want us out of here. How do we do that, Lord? How might I get out? and ask him to show you. The book that I was referring to that talked about belonging, it's an excellent book. It's called This Here Flesh by Cole Arthur Riley or Cole Riley, Riley Arthur. I'm not sure which is whatever, but This Here Flesh. It's got a big heartbeat with veins and stuff on the front, out like a heart. It's a graphic black cover book, a beautiful book. I've read it twice. I'm about to read it the third time. It's the best book I've read in a long, long time. So I would encourage you, if you like devotional books that are provocative. I mean, she calls God a she, so it's a little provocative, written by an African-American writer, but beautiful writer, and she has some very profound things to say. So if you're interested in stretching outside of your normal evangelical mindsets of things, it could be an interesting and provocative read. Is there anything I can do to help my daughter to be able to cry? They haven't been able to cry due to the deep pain. Any thoughts about that, Diana?
Oh boy, that's a good question. I guess I am a little averted to, I guess my question is she ready to cry? I don't, they haven't been able to cry due to the deep pain. And I don't know what that pain is. I don't know what it's about, if it's loss or if it's divorce. But I would say the first step is helping her have a voice for what she's experienced. And if oftentimes if people cannot use their voice, I will sit with them while they draw their experience or write their experience. They don't have to confess it to me, but somehow getting it out of them, maybe an illustration of it might be the first step.
Yeah, you mentioned daughters. And so I would be curious how old they are. And if that's their normal pattern to not cry about things, like, are they kind of stoic and stuff things, or is this new? Is this unusual that they don't cry about things? So I think there's some, question about, if this is their personality or is it something very traumatic that they're stuck in. And the other thing is, depending on how old they are, it may not be your work to do.
Right.
You can be their mom and really care about them, but if they're of age, it really is their work to do. I think Diana's right. You can give them lots of permission. Honey, it's okay to cry. But I don't think you can do the work that they need to do to let those emotions forth.
You can provide opportunities, but it's just been my experience that especially kids under 18, sometimes they're not ready to do that work. And that doesn't mean they won't ever get to it, but sometimes they just need to get through whatever it is they're doing. They don't maybe want to face that while they're in school trying to achieve or something like that. And I trust their judgment if they're not ready to look at that or to face that. I don't think it's my job to tell them that they have to, but to provide an avenue that they can when they're ready. Geez, I'm forever that mom. I was like buying books for my kids, how to process their emotions, and they're cleaning out the house when they're moving out. And I, see this, I don't know how many of them they read and they didn't read, but I still buy them journals for Christmas. So giving them the opportunity to express and to learn and to grow about their experience is the best I think we can do, and then wait for them to be ready to speak.
Mm-hmm. And there are some good books, about processing pain. Kate Ballard just wrote a good book. This life shouldn't be this way, or something like that. There's some good books by more younger people writing about, losing something or going through a loss of health or, tragedy in their marriage, those kind of things that can be helpful when it's like not mom, but, somebody closer to their age that's writing about that experience. And I think the best thing that you can do is to de-shame it and normalize it, that tears, the very first thing we did when we were born was we cried. We cried. And, tears are very normal. They're part of God's place for us to release pain internally. and it's okay. And so to be just giving them permission and telling them it's normal, maybe giving them a really pretty journal and a couple of journal prompts for Christmas might be something that you can do without being too invasive. And also saying to them, like Diane said, I trust you that you know best what's best for you right now. And it might be that it's best for them just to stick their nose in their school books and stay in school and finish the semester and get through it and not get in touch with their emotions where they're afraid that they're going to have a breakdown and they're not going to be able to finish what they need to do. Right. I think people are really afraid of their feelings because they're afraid that if they feel the intensity of their emotions, they're never going to be able to get back to normal. Like once I open the floodgates, I'm going to be crying for the rest of my life. And that's not true. But when we tell ourselves that, then we like hold it all back because we're so afraid that if I feel the intensity of my emotions, I'm going to lose control of myself. And we'll talk about that a little bit in the workshop because that's not true. It doesn't have to be true. We can feel intense feelings and still be in control of ourselves. It doesn't mean we aren't going to cry hard, but we're not going to go and do something dangerous to ourselves or dangerous to others because we stay in control of ourselves. We know what our limits are and our boundaries. And so understanding that you can have strong emotions and those strong emotions don't have to control you. They may control your body a little bit in terms of sobbing and those kind of things, but they don't have to control the decision functioning part of your being.
I think we have a response saying they're college-age daughters. The only thing I would add to that is some of my clients have found on Amazon mood cards that you can pull a mood card and explore how you're feeling and journal about it. They're just like journal prompts. I thought it was a neat little tool. I bought a deck of creativity cards, ways to stimulate your creativity. So there's so many good things out there that can help us to move forward.
Mm-hmm. And I don't know what the hurt was from them, but understand that what your pain is may be different than what their pain is. So I don't know what the situation was, whether their dad left or he found another woman or, if he was abusive to them, but sometimes our children don't feel the same pain that we feel, and so again, it might be helpful for you to think, am I projecting my intense pain on them like they feel what I feel? Maybe they don't feel what you feel. They feel differently because they're not the wife, they're the daughter, and maybe that's a different relationship that they have or whatever. And, obviously if somebody died in your family and they were closer to you than to them, maybe your parents, and so you're grief-stricken and they were their grandparents, and maybe it doesn't feel quite the same to them. So I don't know what the pain is about or what is around, but it sounds like it's some sort of loss that both of them experienced. And again, maybe they share that with one another, but they don't share that with you. So I wouldn't make assumptions about them not dealing with it just because they're not dealing with it the way that you think they should. But I love Diana's suggestions and having a conversation with them about it, or at least not a conversation. It may be just a monologue if they don't want to talk about it, but just, hey, if you need a place to talk, or here's some journals if you'd like to write. I don't want you to feel stuck with your pain. I'm here to listen if you want to, and just keep that door open.
Yeah. Definitely don't go in lecture mode. Stay in listening mode, not lecture mode, especially with that age range. I have learned. Just wait for the opportunities.
Yes, my children had the signal for me because I was like the teacher of all things, And so when they got older, they would go like lock it up, Mom. And I would have to just shut my mouth because they didn't want to hear it. And that's a hard thing for some of us to do. Just being real here. Yeah, my own children did not. In fact, this is a funny story. I was at a concert once and I was listening to Clay Aiken. Remember him? He won the American Idol second place or something. So I was listening to him at a concert with my husband, and I get this phone call, and it's from my son. He's in college, and he calls me, goes, Mom, he goes, I'm watching you on TV. And he says, you're saying some pretty good things. I said, I say these things to you all the time. You just don't listen. But he's watching me in a completely different space where I wasn't actually talking to him. I was talking to somebody on the television, and he's like, I think what you're saying is pretty good. But most of the time, our kids really don't want to hear from us, no matter who we are. So don't take it personally. do your own work, be available and loving. And that's what they need. They need a loving mom who's there if they need her. And they may be at a place where they don't want to need you. And that's part of their maturing as independent people. All right. So in our closing, we just want you to know a couple things. Breakdown is normal. Heartbreak is normal. Real godly people experience these things. We don't talk about it because it's scary, but it happens. It's okay. You will get through it. You can get through it. You do need some support. Take care of yourself. Rest. Rest your body, rest your mind, rest your soul. Take it slow. You will get through this, and you can write a new story. The story doesn't end at breakdown. The story doesn't end at heartbreak. But you do need to do your work to move through that. And hopefully you've gotten some good tips today from Diana and I, and actually probably far more better tips from the chat as I read them. I'm going to go through it and copy some things down that some of you have suggested because it sounds wonderful. And I love the ideas that all of you have brought to the table. So we're going to go. If I don't see any other questions on my, let me just see. I don't see any more. One more question I'll answer as we go, but we're going to go, and hopefully we'll see you at the workshop. I think we have another Facebook Live on Friday, and I'm not sure what the topic is, but Karen, if you can look on the calendar and just put it in the feed, that will help people know what the topic is. But I have one more question. Diana, why don't you take it? I'll read it to you. What work do I have to do so I don't feel attraction toward narcissists? When I was dating someone, he told me, his therapist told him he was a narcissist and he has OCD. My problem is, why do I feel so attracted to him, even when I know it won't be healthy? I feel ashamed of myself.
Well, maybe he's good looking is my first thought. I don't know. I come from a family of women, and my mom was always, we were noticing good looks. You know what I mean? I was always a sucker for somebody who was good looking. But it goes beyond that. Why am I attracted to somebody like that? What is it about them? Do they present well? Are they flattering to me? What is it that I feel like I need from this person that they're giving me? There's so many good questions to ask yourself about that. The fact that you have a therapist, his therapist told him he was a narcissist, and OCD is a red flag. And the question is, why am I not running? There may be a part of you that really longs for a broken person, and I'm not sure why that is. That's a great question. Is it that I feel like I can fix him, help him? What is it?
Mm-hmm. It's a great question. I so admire you for putting it out there, but here's where you're going to be caught. You said, I feel ashamed of myself. And this is something that we teach a lot in our groups, and we'll talk about this a little bit if you decide to join a coaching group of ours, is that the very first part of getting healthy, if you want to get healthy in whatever you're in, whether it's you're in a bad relationship or you're going through breakdown in some other way, is kind of self-awareness. It's like that looking in the mirror and asking yourself, what is it about me that's attracted to this guy? Or what is it about me that keeps putting down my boundaries? Or what is it about me that keeps eating too much when I'm stressed out, or whatever it is, right? It's usually something we don't like about ourselves that we're noticing. And if that's true, whether it's we're noticing that we're getting old, or we're noticing that we're gaining weight, or we're noticing that we're attracted to the wrong people, it's tempting to then go into beat up mode. What's wrong with me? I feel disgusted with myself. I'm such a pig. I'm such a slob. I'm such a, codependent, whatever we label ourselves with. And as soon as you do that, you're going to shut down noticing, because it's just painful. It's just painful. So I'm not going to notice. I'm going to start going into blind mode. I'm not going to see. And if you're not going to see what you're doing that's unhealthy, then you can't change it. Just like if you don't see that you've got broccoli in your teeth, you're not going to brush your teeth or floss your teeth, right? You're just going to keep going, and it looks terrible, but you don't notice because you didn't want to look. And so instead of beating yourself up, I love what you said. What work do I have to do? I recognize that I'm attracted to guys who aren't good for me. What's going on with that? Does he remind me of one of my parents that I have unfinished business with? There's lots of reasons, and really good question. The big Achilles heel that I see in your question is, I feel ashamed of myself. And so that's going to shut down curiosity. Instead of saying, I feel proud of myself that I'm willing to look at this and I'm willing to recognize this is a bad fit. Why do I keep getting drawn like a magnet to toxic people? That's a really, really good question. Answer it so that you don't keep and heal from it, so you don't keep getting drawn. But as soon as you start beating yourself up for it, whoosh, the blinders are going to go back on because it's just too painful, right? If you keep feeling so ashamed of yourself. So I love the question. Let go of the shame and keep exploring and just be curious. I'm curious. What's going on with me? What need does this fill for me? Can I be the hero of their story? Do I believe that my love will fix them? That I'm going to come in like the savior and swoop down and fix his OCD? And maybe it's not as blatant as that, but I do have some thoughts about that. And I would really encourage you to continue to pursue that, because I do think that it can lead to a real breakthrough for you, so that you're not continuing to be attracted to people who aren't good for you or good for anybody really, until they can heal their own self. I'm sorry, just one more question. So I do want to answer this. Diana, are you okay with that? Or can you stick with? Okay.
Yeah, I'm okay.
Advice for working through debilitating grief and disbelief while contending with a full-blown CPTSD, chronic post-traumatic stress disorder, during a divorce after almost 4 decades, to extreme covert narcissist. Description by multiple counseling teams and doctors. Just seems like I'm trapped in more fear and depression than in faith. So what tips would you have for her working through debilitating grief and disbelief while contending with complex post-traumatic stress disorder during a divorce?
I think the first, support, someone that can walk alongside you, and regulation, emotional regulation. I don't think it's healthy to work on your trauma until you can get out of this intense feeling state. So you first have to get to a place where you can find some strong support for what emotion you're feeling and going through, and then you can step into the healing process there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So safety is always first, right? And so you need to get the support so you feel like you have a secure base of support, and then safety, that when you get deregulated emotionally, you know some tools on how to journal or calm yourself down or call a friend, or some ways that you're not just stuck and spiraling downward into that grief or that trauma. And then you may want to get some additional professional help to work on your trauma. So the old adage, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. How do you climb a mountain? One step at a time. This isn't going to be like once and done, over with for you. You've gone through a lot. You've gone through a lot, and you're going through a lot. And so here's where you've got to gear yourself for the process and the journey. And the journey of 1,000 miles begins with the first step, and then the next step, and then the next step. And I promise you, if you keep taking those steps, you will get through it. It's when you stop and you say, I can't, I won't, it's not working, because you haven't finished the process. It's like the caterpillar who gets stuck in the cocoon. Who likes getting stuck in the cocoon? But he's really not stuck. It's just the process. He's in this process. It's a dark place. And amazing things are happening in that dark place, but it can't see it. It can't feel it. It doesn't know it. But God knows it. And this is where you have to believe in the process. And even though you're in the dark space between breakdown and breakthrough, and you don't know what's really happening, as long as you continue to put one foot in front of the other and take those steps forward, you will get through the process to the emergence of the butterfly, of who you're meant to be through that process. All right. So our prayers go with you. It's no fun being in that place. And so we just encourage you, like Diana said, the first step is to get support, because you can't do this all by yourself. Anything else you want to say?
Yeah, I was holding back. I think get good support. Find if you're going to get into some, find good support, healthy support. And if it doesn't resonate with you where you're at and what you need, find something else. Find someone else. Don't be afraid. Don't say it's me. Something's wrong with me, but listen to what you need and what you know and what you're experiencing. And just move through until you find someone that can work well with you, and find loving people in your life that can support you, that will validate what you're going through and be a strength for you.
Mhm. And it may be more than one person. It may be,
Right.
one person can't be your sole support person, or they may tucker out, but God is there for you, and find some people who can walk this journey with you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Life is hard, isn't it? Life is hard, and we are struggling sojourners, and some of us are struggling more than others. Some of us have heavier burdens than others. Some of us got worse cards in life, family cards or marriage cards or health cards or whatever. And it's hard because sometimes it feels unfair, and it is unfair. Like, why did we get to be born in America? I'm grateful I don't live in Ukraine or China right now, or Iran, and it is unfair. We don't understand why God has blessed us, even though we're suffering too in different ways. But it's really important to get into that small little space of perspective again and say, you know what? There's lots of things that are good in my life, even though there's a lot of things that are bad. And I have to trust God that He's put me here for a reason. And there's things I can learn in this space, and places I can grow, and people I can meet to support me, that I can support, that I can learn. God says that He takes our pain and comforts us in it so that we can comfort others. We are meant to do that, to learn from our grief so that we can comfort others in their grief and in their heartbreak. And so I hope you've taken away some gold nuggets here from today about how you can heal and rest and restore and reboot in your life. And I hope you've signed up for the workshop on Tuesday on changing your story, changing your life, moving from breakdown to breakthrough. Any final words, Diana?
Well, we hope to see you at the workshop. We'll be live. The coaches will be in the feed, and we're looking forward to seeing you there.
Yeah. The workshop will be an hour, and then we will stay for another hour afterwards to answer questions that you might have that might be a little bit more personal than they can be on the Facebook page. And so show up. We would love to help you move from breakdown to breakthrough so that you can change your story and eventually see your life change. Take care. We'll talk soon. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.